we're hearing that Dillian Whyte versus Jermaine Franklin is nearly a done deal for the 26th of November at the Oval Arena, Wembley, which used to be called the Wembley Arena in London. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jermaine Franklin is an unbeaten American heavyweight, 21-0, 14 KOs, 6'2", 77-inch reach, so not a tall heavyweight by today's standards. In his last fight, he weighed 277 pounds, so grossly overweight for that one. Prior to that, he was 231 against Pavel Sauer. He fought Jerry Forrest, won by a split decision in 2019. He was 240 for that one. Rydell Booker, he was 245. So as you can see, he's kind of a medium-sized heavyweight, really, but not always in the best of shape. And if we look at some of the results here, Pavel Sauer, he went the distance with him in 2019. This guy has fought the likes of Hughie Fury. We look at his record here. He's 15-12. And he was stopped by Ajit Kabayel, not a good sign. Stopped by Peter Milas, not a good sign. Went the distance with Pejar. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but I've seen him fight. I think did he fight David Price? He was stopped by this guy here. He was stopped by another guy here. He was stopped by Makhmudov in one round, who can punch. He was stopped by Nathan Gorman in 2. That's not good form, is it? He was stopped by Hughie Fury in 3. Again, Hughie Fury, not the biggest puncher you've ever seen. Stopped by Filip Hrgovic in 1. So this is a guy who is no stranger to the canvas. But somehow he was able to go the distance with... God, where am I at here? Yeah, he was able to go the distance with Jermaine Franklin. So that doesn't suggest that Franklin is a massive puncher, or at least it doesn't suggest that he's a prolific puncher. He's not a guy who manages to get his big power shots on target on a regular basis enough for him to put opponents down and keep them there. So with Dillian Whyte, you would imagine he'd have too much experience for this guy, but he would be able to hit Jermaine Franklin with his best shots before Franklin lands on Dillian Whyte's chin. But Whyte is so chinny these days. And, you know, I'm not convinced that he hasn't suffered some neurological problems from the knockout defeat to Povetkin and now the knockout defeat to Tyson Fury. For any of you who've never read the interview, I don't know if there's a video or an audio version, but there's certainly written interviews with Michael Venom Page. When he got knocked out by Douglas Lima, he spoke about how in the following weeks and months, he suffered all these weird neurological issues due to that knockout. And remember, he didn't take a ton of punishment against Douglas Lima in that Bellator match. It was just one punch. And from that, he was suffering all kind of weird problems. That is more common than fans realize in boxing. Fighters don't often talk about this stuff. A lot of the neurological problems don't show up on brain scans, okay? And fighters will often keep them to themselves because they don't want to lose their licenses and stuff like that. So, yeah, I wouldn't at all be surprised if Dillian Whyte has suffered these kind of issues following the Povetkin knockout and then the Fury knockout. I think he's never been more vulnerable in terms of punch resistance than he is now. And one thing I've observed over the years when it comes to fighters who have this severely diminished punch resistance after knockout defeats is that time, in many instances, or at least some instances, can be a healer. So if you give yourself enough time without getting hit, then some of those issues can resolve themselves. But Dillian Whyte, of course, has no intention of being out the ring for any great period. He wants to get straight back on the horse. And that, even though it's admirable from a courage perspective, because Dillian Whyte is an extremely courageous man, it's mistaken. I sound like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, right? That's kind of like the line that he says. So, yeah, it should be within Dillian Whyte's capabilities, even with the diminished punch resistance, to get past Jermaine Franklin based upon what I've seen of Franklin and based upon his record not being a prolific puncher. But when you're this vulnerable, any guy who's over 220, 230 has the potential to stop you, to knock you out, even if you're winning a fight. And he will have surely seen those knockout defeats that Dillian Whyte has suffered. And I'm sure he's honing his uppercut right now as we speak. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about Dillian Whyte coming back against Jermaine Franklin. Now, obviously, on paper, this is an unbeaten fighter. So from a marketing perspective, it works. But does it work from a matchup perspective in terms of risk reward? Let me know what you guys think. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and is 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.